Hello, fronds, and welcome to the Plant Quest podcast. In this week's episode, we're taking more of a storytime approach and sharing some of our war stories and our never-ending battle against pests. And at the end of the episode, we play a little debate game where we force each other to defend statements that are somewhat controversial in the plant community. Thanks for joining us. Maybe those of you who've been watching us have been expecting us to talk about variegated plants a bit, since it's kind of been a topic that's come up in conversation a lot, and I've seen that there's been quite a lot of discussion about it on Twitter at the moment, like the unpopular opinions and stuff like that.
Triggers me a lot.
Joe's a little bit triggered by that, but actually, given that some things that's happened to us today, we thought that it would be a bit more appropriate for us to talk about pests, bugs, invaders, home invaders, because we have pretty much gotten rid of probably about 50% of our plant collection today. Well, maybe not today.
That dramatic. There have been casualties.
We've had 50%. We've gotten rid of 50% of it this week.
Yeah. For this week, I've gotten rid of 50% of it.
Joe went on a murder spree.
I like to call it a controlled cull.
That's not better.
No, it is, because a cull implies like intention. A murder spree implies like chaos. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like calculated.
It wasn't.
Okay, that makes me sound insane.
Yeah, all right. Like you're like plantannibal.
I'm slowly digging myself into a hole.
Very funny. But so why did we get rid of the first load of plants again? We just didn't have room for them, was it? Or Well, we had them wigglers, them bottom wigglers. What were they called?
Right, of course. So yeah, the first load of plants we got rid of they had Springtails, which are a bit like fungus gnats. They reside in the moist layers of the plant pot, and if you don't water as frequently, you won't actually have them. But if you water so quite frequently, then your plant pots are just going to be always moist.
I'm surprised, given that we got these like trays for our windowsill to pop the plants in, because we wanted to create a little bit of extra humidity for them so we could leave water in it. Them Springtails didn't just like drown because they were just like always wet? Or do they like burrow further
they
up?
love it. They love they thrive in humid, wet conditions, like the little white bugs, and when you kind of disturb them, they like jump about sort of thing, and they're actually used in terrariums to create, or paludariums or aquariums or whatever which arium you want to call it. So yeah, they're used in terrariums. You actually buy them and put them in along with like woodlouse to create like a bioactive environment for like your amphibians to live in.
So is that because they're like frog food?
No.
Or do they do something else? Like, do they cause something else to happen in the soil? Or
so yeah, they'll degrade and churn up all the matter. So they'll decompose the matter in the aquarium, making it bioactive, like making it an active environment sort of thing. So it's all about recycling the resources. Of course, it's like
So one man's pest is another man's prize.
That's it. So like isopods and springtails are like a really common input into terrariums, but yeah, we don't like them.
You know what, you've said that we've had them quite a few times, but I'm really lucky that I've never seen them. I think I'd be really squicked out.
The thing is they won't venture outside the pot unless you just like, normally I like tap the pots just to see if we do have any, and then you like see them like just like scuttling around. They're harmless. They're less than 1/10 of a millimeter. Okay. Less than 1/2 millimeter, maybe 1/4 of a millimeter in size.
Oh, maybe that's why I haven't seen
They're
them.
really tiny. But you sometimes see them on Instagram, because like they'll be like, oh, look at the top of my monstera soil, and it's like you see them all wriggling about like infestation, and I'm like,
how did you let it get that bad?
Well, it's not even that. It's because they're overwatering their plants. Okay. Like, you shouldn't have a monstera which is like constantly wet.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I'll put my pretentious hat off. And,
yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a result of like I guess, misunderstanding, I suppose. Or
they're not bad pests. All they do is decompose the soil. They're not eating the roots, not eating the plant.
Not like fungus gnats.
Well, I mean, fungus gnats are the same.
No, I hate them because they are annoying.
We'll get onto that later. But fungus gnats are in the same sort of boat, because fungus gnats, don't actually cause any damage to plants, although they do eat immature, sort of like really fibrous roots. So like your little seedling sort of thing, but they're not going to do any damage to like a monstera with those chunk of roots that they have sort of thing. But yeah, they're just more annoying than anything else, aren't they?
So annoying.
But let's get on to the crux of the talk anyway.
Yeah, so Joe is very enthusiastic about pest management, which is what he calls it, and I call it bug splatting. And he really wants to share his very thorough knowledge about how to identify pests, and also how to deal with them and get rid of them if you need to get rid of them, because there's like loads of stuff in that category of like your job that you've brought home to us that's like helped quite a lot, especially when we've encountered pests in our home, and in stuff that like I wouldn't have noticed, and like B wouldn't have known how to treat even if I had noticed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I noticed the fungus gnats because they get out and they like you water your plant and then like there's a cloud of little flies. But I
don't just bring home knowledge. Sometimes I bring home little insects too. Remember that time when I was doing tree work and there was like mealybugs stuck to my back?
Oh my gosh, yeah, you came back home with literally like a big like powdery thing of mealybugs on your back, and I was like, and a leaf stuck to your back.
I had leaves stuck to me all
the time. And I was like, I didn't think anything of it. I just pulled the leaf off. I was like, oh, you got this leaf on your back? And you looked at it and you were like, it's got mealybugs on it. And you like took it off and like burn it all.
I didn't burn my shirt, but
you soaked it all in alcohol.
It's gotta die. Once you get one, those females will lay loads of eggs.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, that was really funny. I mean, it wasn't funny for you because you will just like strip everything, spray everything with alcohol.
Sometimes if I know that I'm going to be working in the canopy of the legume trees that I work with, I know that I'm going to be shaking the tree and stuff and I'm going to have stuff on me. I like shake off my shirt before I actually get into the house, so I just know that then I'm not bringing anything in because that's going to sit in a washing basket for a bit.
And you don't bring your work shoes inside the house
Exactly.
either.
I have work shoes left at work because we have cockroaches at work as well, so I do not, and you can just stand on one egg and it gets trapped in the sole of your foot, and that's chaos.
Oh gosh, it's like all the things you don't think about as well. And the crazy thing is, like, you can just bring these things back from the garden center, like, and that's the thing. It's like you think your house is like pest free because you've got pest free plants, but all it takes is like one small plant to come back with something that has jumped on it, and then they will spread to every plant that you've got. And that's why you have to be like so careful, and that's why we've had like you said, like had this cull of plants, because it's just not worth it.
But yeah, so getting into it, identification, I'm afraid it's going to be up to you. I'm going to describe a few things that you've got to look out for, but there's no substitute for like reading a book or looking online to see what to look out for, because this is a podcast.
Yeah. And I will say, like, the only reason why you noticed one of these pests today is because you were literally with a 60 times zoom like little lens thing. So, but anyway, sorry, continue.
So identification, I'm afraid the onus is on you, but I mean there are only really like 3 pests which you got to really look out for. But the way in which you control these pests and look out for them, it's called Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. You can Google it to find more information on it. But essentially that lists out a series of different controls that you can put onto your environment in order to like nuke the hell out of these pests. So like normally what you want to do is you want to do multiples of these sort of like methods in order to like really hit home and make sure that they're eradicated. So first we've got cultural. So that includes physical methods of removal, so like squishing the aphids that we discussed in another video. It includes just pruning out the pests. That's pretty effective.
Cutting the leaves that they're on.
Exactly, yeah, cutting the leaves they're on.
Does that include like washing out soil and changing soil?
Exactly, yeah, repotting the plant. That's physical. Then we go a slightly more hard. So we've got cultural, but now we go to chemical. So with chemical, you've got your insecticidal soaps. So they're pretty. That's like your SB Invigorator. Sorry, SB Invigorator. So it's SB Plant Invigorator. So it's like it's insecticidal soap. It foams up a bit like Fairy Liquid, except it's like MAP approved, so Ministry approved pesticide product. So yeah, you've got insecticidal soaps which are recommended because they'll sort of like they'll give nutrients to the leaves to help them fight off disease and pests, but also they're like a physical action on the pests themselves.
Do they like kill the pests?
They like abrasion? No. They like chemically weather the shells of the pests.
Oh, I see.
And because insects don't breathe through their mouths, they normally breathe through like little side holes on the abdomens. Ugh. It actually suffocates them. And because it's a physical mode of action, it's actually, they can't become immune to it.
Oh, I see. They can't like develop a resistance.
That's it. They can't develop. That's exactly the terminology that we don't want, because a lot of these chemicals, like harder chemicals, they act on the insect in a certain way and it's poisonous to them, but then like subsequent generations who survive this chemical develop resistances to it.
Okay, so you need something that is, I guess, like you say, like a chemical weapon where it's gonna be like something like an acid or whatever. Like, I know it's not an acid, but act as that way, where they can't like biologically develop a like immune response to it.
Yeah, so chemicals aren't great. It's kind of like a last resort. Soft chemicals like insecticidal soaps are pretty good to go for. Then you've got like stuff like Neem Oil, where like it's like natural products. It's like another physical mode of action, but just because it's natural doesn't actually necessarily mean that it's good for you either.
Didn't you say that Neem Oil? You told me that Neem Oil's illegal in this country.
Yeah, so it's.
But like loads of plant influencers use it.
Yeah, well the thing is most plant influencers are actually from America.
Okay. Yeah,
so Neem Oil is legal for its use in like cosmetic sort of like application sort of thing, but to use on plants it's actually illegal in the UK at present sort of thing, according to the Plant Protection Act. So we briefly went over insecticidal soaps and physical modes of chemical action, but the things that really do the damage and chemicals that you can build resistance into the insect by overusing or misusing are the neonictinoids. They're normally like they're active ingredients which, if sprayed incorrectly, can cause like quite significant environmental damage. Now, within a glass house, you're not going to be wanting to. Pollinators aren't your main concern because it's a closed environment, and same within your home as well.
Okay, yeah.
Although they have the harder chemicals have health effects where you need to be wearing full PPE, hazmat suit, the respirator with the filters, because they're really hazardous to your health.
And I guess that's exactly why you don't want to be spraying this stuff in your garden, because you don't want bees and butterflies to be taking it back, like bees back to their hive, or butterflies or anything, because they're the ones that are keeping the plants alive. So
yeah, so there are quite a lot of different neonicotinoid chemicals, and quite a few of them are actually banned in EU regulation, which has also turned into our law as well, even with Brexit. So neonicotinoids are bad news, and you should never spray flowers outside, because that neonicotinoid can actually adversely affect pollinators like bees, and they accumulate through the food chain. So they'll affect the bees, then the birds, then the bigger birds of prey. They're really bad news, which is why they're banned. And you've got to be really careful in the use. You've got to be like an authorized user and fully trained sort of thing.
Fair enough. Damn. But yeah, I guess that's why like a lot of people use dish soap and stuff like that, because they think like, oh, well, dish soap's fine for me. Like, if I swallow dish soap, it's gonna make me sick, but it's not gonna like kill me. Whereas like if I use like a chemical, then, you know, that's bad news. But I guess it depends on the chemical, I suppose, because dish soap's still a chemical.
Yeah, that's a lot of websites you'll see. They'll give you like home remedies of sort of like, mainly including Fairy Liquid, to apply onto your plants to get rid of pests, and that's all well and good if it works for you. but these products that these are recommending haven't actually been tested vigorously on all plants. So what might work for one person in one case may actually make all the foliage drop on your prized plant drop in another, because plants react in different ways, and it's the manufacturer's responsibility to thoroughly experiment on all these different sort of like plants and environments to ensure that their intended use and they're fit for use. Yeah. They're fit for their intended use.
I think it's also worth mentioning that, like, you know, what the use case is. So there's going to be a difference using something that isn't approved for use on plants and stuff on your house plant, which you're not going to eat, than it is like your tomatoes, which you're going to want to eat. So like rubbing dish soap and all sorts of stuff on your tomatoes might not be actually that great for you, because, well, it might make them taste naff. I don't know. We haven't rubbed our tomatoes and dish soap, but whereas like on a house plant, like I guess you can kind of check for the response, because, you know, I think that's also it. Like fairy liquid is just something everyone has in their house, and if it's online, people are recommending that it gets rid of.
It feels familiar and it feels safe,
but also like it doesn't cost anyone anything, right? So I think that's why it's such a go-to, because it's like an affordable way that is recommended by the community rather than experts, because
that's exactly it. It's recommended through community and not experts. Like a lot of stuff you see online is just created by another average sort of like person with potentially no horticultural experience. Well, I mean, most people who write blogs about using XYZ probably have horticultural experience, but they're not going to be like a lab scientist, and they haven't rigorously tested this product through like various situations.
There's a balancing act in that though, because like when you get situations where you have people saying like, well, you shouldn't do this because it's not approved by XYZ, and you know, you should never use something that you haven't read in this scientific journal. It's like, well, most people don't have access to scientific journals, and certainly most people might not know even where to buy the right kind of chemical control to be able to get rid of their pest problem.
You're completely right. I mean, like most journal websites actually have a big paywall on them before you can actually fully access the journal. You might be able to read the abstract, but that's it. But yeah, moving on, chemicals are a big deal, and it should only really be used as a last resort. Obviously, insecticidal soaps are pretty good because they're not hazardous to health if you use them correctly. But yeah, the next one is quite interesting. It's biological. So it's using insects further up the food chain to prey on the pests that you don't want.
Oh my god, release the Kraken.
Yeah,
we did this though.
Yeah, we did it in the home scale. It's mostly used in commercial scale, but would you like to tell us about what we did?
Well, I can chime in here because I thought this was the grossest thing that I'd ever heard, and this kind of led on to a bit of a wild goose chase for me, where I started thinking like, well, how can I solve my other pest problems? So we had kind of like a twofold problem. We had the fungus gnat issue that I kind of mentioned before when we were cultivating the monstera in moss, because it just created the perfect environment for fungus gnats to thrive. And I realized that once I started putting sticky traps like next to that moss, that it was just like catching like hundreds of fungus gnats as they just like burst forth. So basically I'd stick the sticky trap in, like, oopsie, I moved the mic. I'd shake the thing and get them all to come out, and then the sticky trap would catch them, and I just keep doing that. And it's like, okay, this is catching them, but like after the fact, and they're clearly being like born in there. And then I talked to Joe about it, and he was like, well, I've done some research. And what are the things called again?
So we bought nematodes.
Nematodes, that's right. And we bought them on Amazon. And it's basically like this like sealed packet of dried up like microscopic worms. And you mix them with water to like activate the worms.
You got to use them as quickly as possible as well, because they have a use-by date.
Because they're live
material. Yeah, that's exactly.
And basically, so like we needed a little bit of time to get ready, and we just kept them in the fridge. And like I was a bit paranoid that like the worm's going to crawl out and go in our food. And this is ridiculous because it's all totally sealed in like a proper like foil sealed packet and stuff, but like we put it in a little lunchbox because I was just like not happy about that being in the fridge, but it's the only way to keep it alive. And we mix that with water and it activates them, and basically then you water all the plants that you want treated, and then the nematodes live in the soil. They grow by like drinking the water and like kind of absorbing the nutrients, and then they go and they eat the fungus gnat eggs.
Well, the larvae,
the larvae, and so they eat them before they turn into flies, and they just totally, and it like totally solved the problem for us. Like we don't see any fungus gnats anymore.
But we didn't just use biological means of control. We combine that with a physical one as well.
With the sticky traps.
Two methods of physical, really. We use the sticky traps, which are really good. They're bright yellow to attract them, to make them think they're flying into a flower, because yellow is like quite a common colour in the flowers. But also, we stopped watering as much.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
We let things dry out before we actually watered, and it was really easy once we actually got rid of the propagation Monstera alba variegata in the moss environment, because it meant we could water once a week instead of like the sphagnum moss.
Constantly moist.
It's just constantly moist, that's it.
Yeah, and like obviously now it prefers like that kind of mixed substrate environment where it's like not just waterlogged soil, which is like the fungus gnat's like preferred environment. It's like got a bit of everything and it's a bit drier, so we found that we've got less of a problem now. And then to flip that over outside, where we've like got some container gardening going on, we were growing what was it really bad on? It was kind of like it wasn't tomatoes that it was really bad on.
The courgettes with blackfly.
Courgettes, that was it. So we had like a real bad problem with aphids, and it was the lettuce.
The lettuce as well.
The lettuce was the worst one.
But then we started getting some ladybugs.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had so many flowers in the garden.
Yeah, so
like attracting.
So that was another thing that we did. So for the lettuce and the courgettes and stuff, we kind of went threefold, because we were using that SB Invigorator, which was the chemical stuff, every so often, which basically kills the adult bugs and the adult aphids, but it doesn't kill any of like the eggs or the larvae or anything, and it'll only kill what's there. So when new ones come, that's it. We did what Joe called companion planting. So we planted a bunch of, or I say planted because it's on a roof. It's not like it's in the ground. We moved a bunch of containers of like flowers that aphids didn't like the smell of around them.
It just like distracted them. So lettuce and basil have like a really significant scent, and the aphids are sort of like trained to sort of like seek that scent. But if all they can smell is salvias, then they won't go towards that area. Yeah. In theory.
Yeah.
They got there anyway.
And
nature finds a way.
Yeah. It did. But to be fair, I think we beat nature on that one. But it was
we played nature. At its own game.
Yeah, when we planted them around that, and that really helped too. And what was the last thing we did apart from me squishing them?
Pruning them out,
that's true as well. But also I was like, well, you can buy these nematodes on Amazon.
You wanted to buy ladybirds, didn't you?
And I found that you can buy a box of like 500 ladybirds on Amazon for like £20, and I was like, Joe, can I buy the ladybirds? And you wouldn't let me. Because it's really funny, because like all the reviews on Amazon are just like, yeah, it arrived in like really quickly. The ladybirds were in great condition. They were all alive. Some of them were a bit stunned, but like, you know, like when I let them go, like they all flew away. Like, what? And it's like, well, yeah. Yeah,
they have no obligation to you.
Yeah.
You ain't paying their wages.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, oh yeah, because we don't have a glass house, we just have kind of like a roof. And I was like, well, I've got some net, so maybe what we can do is we can like cover everything in net, and then we can release the ladybirds inside the net, and then the ladybirds will eat all of the aphids.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really good idea.
But you didn't let me do it.
Because lettuces cost like £1 each.
Yeah.
And you're expending a lot more money trying to control them.
So that was it, right? It was like basically the lettuces cost less than £1 each, I think, given how much like the seeds and stuff cost and like the soil that we already had, and it was going to cost 25 quid, and it was like, how much lettuce could I buy for 25 quid just to keep these tiny lettuces alive? And it's just...
So like, with integrated pest management, you can go as deep or as sort of like shallow as you want.
I was ready to go deep.
You were. But you've just got to contextualize, and like sometimes you just got to step back and go.
You do have to take a step back. Yeah,
and
I was.
How valuable are these plants? And sometimes you just think, you know what, a great physical mode of action. That plant isn't worth my time. I'm gonna throw it away.
Yeah.
It's infested. You can eat it. Take it.
Yeah.
Please.
That's it. And it's like, you know, you have to really weigh the time and money investment in protecting some plants, I guess, because sometimes as well, if that plant isn't even necessarily like valuable, whether that's in like monetary value or kind of like its output or whatever,
or sentimental value,
like you could be putting your other plants at risk by just having that as like kind of like the patient zero. And like, you know, you're trying to get rid of the pests on this plant, but in the meantime these pests have used this plant as like a hub world to like move to all of your other plants in your garden or wherever. So yeah, we had a few problems with that, but it's kind of calmed down. When it's windy, it's a bit better, and it's been kind of windy at the moment. But it's turned
into a little environment now. That's great.
It is.
I've seen so many bees.
Yes, and we planted loads and loads of flowers because we wanted to encourage bees to come pollinate all of the vegetables that we planted. And
I saw them working on my basil, and I was like, work.
Yeah, because the basil's got a flower now.
I want it to seed, so we got like lots of little seeds.
You get free basil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, so those are like two of the pest problems we've had, and we've kind of got like one more tale of pest problems that somebody brought into the house when they bought a plant into the house.
Yeah, well, I don't know, like you say, okay, I'll use patient zero. I don't know who patient zero was, but I have some theories. But yeah, earlier today, I was just like looking over my plants, and that's the most important thing I should mention with integrated pest management. It sounds complicated, but a lot of the time you're actually doing several of these sort of like actions at once without even realizing it. You're watering at the right times, you're looking at your plants, but yeah, most important part of integrated pest management is observing your plants and catching the pests early, because once you have an infestation, it's going to be pretty hard to get rid of it on all your plants.
Yeah, you want to get it before it spreads.
I just want to start with a clean slate.
And that's what we've done. We've like gutted all of our plant collection because
there were a few casualties. They were like low value casualties, I felt.
No, none of our apart from two, none of our plants are very high value.
It was a controlled cull.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically this morning I was looking over at some video and going, oh, look at all this juicy new growths it's got on the pseudobulbs. And I was like really happy, and I was like, what the fuck is that? I was like, that mosaic mottling on the top side of the leaf, it was like yellow speckled with green, so it's like loads of little dots, and they're all like sort of like different colours on the leaf, which is like a symptom of red spider mite. So I immediately went to my hand lens, which has got like 30 times magnification. Lauren's just like working at the desk, like looking over me like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, you're just off one. You just like small intake of breath and then like a shuffling, and then you're just suddenly like your plant is like this close to your face.
I did gasp. You were like, what's wrong? Did you drop something?
And you were like, no, never mind. Go back to work. And I was like, okay.
So yeah, on the Cymbidium orchid, I didn't actually find very many spider mites. A lot of them were just dead, or like I saw like a few like the bodies of the spider and some eggs, but I didn't actually see any live ones. So then I thought, okay then, now I've got to check everything, because that Cymbidium used to be in our prop case, aka bookcase.
Well, all you can see from here is like books, but
yeah, there's a lot of plants in there.
On the other level, it's like...
But yeah, the Cymbidium's been around, so I was thinking, okay, isolate, contain the virus.
Yeah. You know where it's been.
I know it's been...
Contact tracing.
I'm contract tracing. I'm doing what the UK government didn't do.
Whoa, that's like too political.
Okay.
But yeah, basically, like you figure out where has it been, what plants has it been near, how long has it been here for.
And the thing is from experience at work, I know how fast these little buggers and how far they can actually get, despite the mites are less than a millimetre big. And like, I had one plant at work on this one of my benches, and it was infested with spider mite, and I like separated it out, put it on a bench with like 2 plants only versus the 30 plants that were on the other one, and like 3 meters, 4 meters away from this plant was the only other plant on that bench, and it was infested with spider mites a day later, and I was like, you little fuckers.
Oh my God.
But anyway, so I knew that this could be bad, so I immediately went through all the plants, and I knew the spider mites love thin-leafed plants. They hate humidity, so they love dry conditions. So I was looking at the succulents. I was thinking, we don't really get the foliage wet at all on any of our plants, so they're all candidates really, because if you living in London, we have calcareous, like calcium-rich, nutrient-rich tap water, and those deposits get on the leaves and cause like limescale on the leaves. Like it's like chalky white droplets on the leaves, and it just looks unaesthetic. So why even bother to water? Leaves don't need constant misting, like unlike most websites will actually lead you to believe.
People trying to flog you the £100 humidifier might lead you to believe.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I mean, most plants. Some plants do require it. Those in tropical environments,
tropical
some orchids, but most plants, subtropical plants or semi-temperate plants, don't need constant humidity, because a plant only takes up 15% of water through its leaves. Like, the majority of that action, like that sucking up of water, is through the roots. Yeah. So, anyway, I diverge. I knew that everything could be a candidate. And, of course, I checked out expensive plants first. But I knew that they'd kind of be safe. And I wasn't that worried because I look at them every day and I would have noticed sooner.
You pay more attention to the fancy ones.
That's it.
But it was the horrible, neglected, was it a bromeliad?
It was an orchid.
An orchid.
Another orchid.
My God,
so
it was that orchid. It was so ugly.
It was a Miltonopsis orchid, like a pansy orchid, and they're really beautiful. It flowered last year, and
it's just been a gross lump of dying leaves since then.
It looks nice. It's putting on loads of new growth.
No.
Okay. Well. Okay. I love keeping orchids past flowering. I think it's really interesting to see the little pseudobulbs develop. Anyway, this thing was covered in spider mite, and I was like,
can't have loved it that much if you weren't looking at it.
I was. I repotted it like 1.5 weeks ago, and it wasn't covered in spider mite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So what I think is the Cymbidium has had spider mite all this time, and we bought that in home base in January, or
we
March?
bought that in lockdown.
It was like March or
April, May, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, because like they didn't reopen. They didn't reopen until the 15th of May.
So yeah, it would have been around then.
Best day of my life when all the garden centres opened.
And all the houseplants were half price because no one had been in for 2 months to water them or give them any sunlight. So everything was dying.
It was great.
It was like a fraction of the price. That was such a hack.
It was sad, but it was like a hack as well, because it's like you can just tell the plants which can survive those conditions. Like this orchids can be quite delicate, but Cymbidiums, they've got such thick pseudobulbs, which is like the growths in the bottom of the leaves, that they store water really well, and they only need watering once every 2 weeks, once every week in summer. But yeah, anyway.
It was absolutely rolling in it.
It was, well, yeah. My Miltonopsis had a lot of spider mite.
And that was on the same tray as quite a lot of other ones.
So yeah, I checked every single plant today. I took them outside, lined them on the wall, got the gun out.
You basically did, yeah. And then like half of them ended up in the bin.
Well, that's it. Okay. So there was a lot of things which didn't actually show any signs of spider mite, but it was such a low value plant that I thought it's not actually worth the risk.
Yeah.
Just in case it had one, because one spider mite can actually lay up to like 20 to 50 eggs a day. Yeah. So I'm not about that.
It's not worth the risk of like keeping something that may or may not be infected to infect everything else that you actually like.
Yeah. So it was only the Miltonopsis and the Cymbidium which actually had spider mite. All the little succulents we had, I knew from experience and research that they could just survive the British climate until September, and then it rains too much and they'll die. So all the succulents went outside, and then
just in case.
Yeah.
Because they were all right next to it.
About 5 or 6 cheap plants went outside and got culled, and then the Tradescantia, which has got quite thin leaves. Didn't find they've got really thin, very small leaves, and so each plant has like
1,000
leaves. And I'm
so it's like you can't check that.
Well, I tried. But I
like
started...
it's literally like trying to find a needle in a haystack with that Tradescantia, which is like this thing here. Like, can you imagine trying to find a spider mite on this plant?
So I didn't really look very hard. I just went, okay, you're very vigorous. You're doing very well. You've put on about this much in one growing season.
Yeah.
You can do it again. Snipped it right at the base. Left 2 leaves from like 100 on each sort of like stalk. And gave it a spray of the insecticidal soap in SB Invigorator.
Because knowing that they have the strength to grow back.
That's exactly it. And Fittonia, it didn't find any spider mite, but I cut that back completely to its first leaves. It had like 4 or 5 leaves. They were quite big and bulky. It was more like precaution than anything else. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's just what you got to do when you potentially have an infestation. Then, following that, I cleaned all the window seals, hoovered, Dettoled,
sprayed
alcohol everywhere. Lauren's like choking while she's working.
I'm trying to work, and the whole house just smells like a...
I like the smell of...
I don't know, it smelled like a morgue or something. It was real bad. It was like real strong smell.
Rubbing alcohol is the best. You can get it in Boots for like £3. Isopropyl alcohol. And it smells so good. No. We have this stuff in work called Propeller, and we use like pure ethanol as well. So, and like ethanol's okay. I can stand it. It really gets up your nostrils.
Probably shouldn't be huffing it.
Well, no, you have no choice when like you've got a plant and it's like yay bit. It's like as big as you sort of thing.
Yeah.
I do wear a mask sometimes when it gets too much, but Propeller, which is really effective at killing things, it's like 100% alcohol again, probably ethanol based. It smells disgusting. Now, rubbing alcohol from Boots, it smells nice.
Okay, I mean,
I can have a pleasant high from that.
We can move on.
Stop
saying that. So yeah, we had red spider mite.
Woodray, not sponsored. This is not an ad.
Yeah, and we've pretty much gotten rid of, I would say, at least 50% of the plants that we did own this week. So
yeah, and we've started again with babies like Pillias.
That's right.
All the mother plant went.
We had a mother plant of Pillia and just gone. We've potted 3 babies. They're good. They were separate from that shelf anyway, so they're probably safe. But also Pillia's an easy one to spot because the leaves are like so flat and large.
Another one, it's unlikely to have spider mite because the leaves are so thick. But as a precaution, the big mother plant we had didn't actually look so great. It was growing a bit asymmetrically because of the position it was in. It was like leaning. It was like, let me see the light, mother.
Yeah, yeah, it was a bit, wasn't it?
But yeah. So TLDR, a lot of plants died. It took forever.
You spent all day doing that.
I was so optimistic in the morning. I was like, on Twitter, I was like, it's time for war.
Yeah.
I found some red spider mite.
And, you know, because the Cymbidium was in a cabinet for most of the time, like, that's like, oh god, so where are they in that cabinet? Like, what else is in that cabinet?
I had to
sterilize
the cabinet.
It was the one that we had all of our Florida Ghost cuttings in. And so, yeah, everything came out. The whole cabinet was sterilized and wiped down and gutted out. And we'll just have to keep an eye on it, really. Like, now we know that it's been in the house. Like,
yeah, so that's a really good point, actually. Like, I mentioned the most important part of, like, pest management is observation. But another one, well, keep observing and keep looking out for things. Because, like, if you don't persevere and do repeat applications of, like, insecticidal soaps and stuff, even if it looks clean, then it's likely you'll get a re-emergence.
Exactly.
Because when you do an insecticidal soap application, it'll like it'll most likely, if you get them all, destroy the shells and render the insect dead. But the eggs can survive it.
Yeah.
It's a protective barrier, and you'll also see them in like really hard to reach places like mealybug. I feel like red spider mite's worse than mealybug because they're just smaller. You can actually squish mealybug. They're like white, woolly.
Could never be me.
Yeah.
But also, I think they're easy to spot because they do create that like woolly little fluff on stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Like the woolly fluff is like their waxy protective layer. It's actually quite resistant to chemicals because it protects both the newborns and the adults. So it's quite difficult to actually get rid of them. So physical control is pretty good if you can, but they also hide. They hide in like the leaf apexes, and the leaf sheaths sort of thing. So like they'll hide in really inaccessible areas, and you can even get root mealybugs.
Oh.
So they'll like sap energy from the roots. Yeah. So the only way to get rid of them is to repot and be really thorough. But
I think we've talked enough about bugs for one day in my life, to be honest.
Sure, I could go on.
I know you could, and that's honestly why I'm going to cut you out, because
you're going to squash me.
I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm going to squash this conversation right here. I think we've talked about pests enough. But you had a game you wanted to play this time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did.
Do you want to play your game?
I almost forgot that.
Okay.
So the game is you've got to defend a statement. So one player defends a statement and the other player attacks the statement. And then we decide at the end of each round, each statement, who won.
Okay.
So very quickly.
Show me the first statement. So am I attacking the statement or defending it?
I'll defend this statement.
And I'll attack it.
So I've tried to make them like planty themed. Mm-hmm. So the statement is, scoured flies are great. So I'm going to defend this.
Okay. Do I get to give you my thoughts first? Or do you go first?
Would you like to give your thoughts first on scoured flies?
So I've already been over my thoughts on scoured flies, and like, they're annoying. They are super annoying because they get all up in your face and they go from plant to plant, and they're just like the grossest things ever. And you don't want to invite people around to your house when you've got little buzzy little flies because they look like fruit flies and it just looks like it doesn't clean your floor, and they're gross and they make your plants like seem gross because every time you water them there's like a little dust cloud of horrible nasty gnats, and also they eat roots and that will kill your plants.
Not all roots, hashtag. So scoured flies are great. They're part of the ecosystem. They biodegrade the soil and what's in them. They're very interesting life cycle. Lay their eggs in moist soil, then they turn to little white worms. Like, what's not to love?
Everything. I think I won this one.
No, I can continue, don't worry.
I don't want you to continue for too much longer.
Okay.
Because I've heard enough.
You've heard enough?
I've heard enough.
Okay. All I was going to say was scoured flies are really great because they let you know that your soil's too moist. If you've got a bunch of aroids and succulents and you have scoured flies, you're probably doing something wrong.
That's true.
So they're like a warning mechanism.
They're a warning mechanism. Okay, but do you know how else I could figure that out?
How?
With a moisture meter.
We don't have a moisture meter, Lauren.
I know, because someone won't let me buy one.
Because you can use your finger and get just as good a result.
Okay.
Anyway.
Should we go for the next one?
So I won this one, did I?
No, I won.
Okay, I'll give it to you.
I've decided that I won because I'm the king of this
Because you
game.
won. Are you going to defend the next one?
So you've got to defend this one. And I'm not going to attack it, you just have to defend it.
No, you can defend the next one then.
Okay.
Because it's your turn.
Okay. Keeping orchids past flowering. I have to defend this.
Yeah, you have to defend it.
This is BS. Okay.
But you love orchids.
Okay, so I do. Yeah. Keeping orchids past flowering is just part of appreciating the whole life cycle of the orchid itself, because it just being a dormant pile of dirty roots and boring green leaves means that it's so much more special when you see that flowering stem grow, and when those beautiful individual bulbs come, like not bulbs, them like flower ones pop out, and then you can guess how many are going to pop out, and you can tell by how tenderly you've treated it and how much it likes you, by how many like flower bulbs you get. And I don't know, they're called flower bulbs, like, do you know, like the little bit before it opens?
Yeah, the buds.
Flower buds, and like watching the flower buds open one by one, and the joy that colour and like life brings makes the whole process of keeping the ugly sack of roots for like the rest of the 11 months of the year worth it.
This is going to be difficult for me because I actually love orchids. Anyway, I did it to wind Lauren up. So
because I'm so annoyed at your ugly ass orchid that was just full of red spider mite.
So yeah, orchids are only good for presents. You buy them, you got flowers, nice, last for a few months because of like the convenience of genetic modification, and then they're done. Then you throw them away, get a new plant. That's all they're good for.
But if you throw them away, then think of the carbon footprint of where they've travelled just to be thrown away.
That's true. Most of them do come from like Indonesia and Thailand.
I think I won this one as well.
Yeah.
Say no more.
You have won this one. I couldn't. Yeah. Orchids aren't just orchids aren't just for Christmas. They're for life.
They're for life.
You can appreciate their morphology.
Yeah.
Through their like different transitional periods, not just through flowering.
Okay, you have to defend this next statement.
Okay. Is it going to trigger me? Okay.
I wrote this one specifically to trigger you.
Plastic plants look cute. So, the great thing about plastic plants is they're just there. They don't do anything. You don't have to look after them. They don't get pests.
No.
You have to, like, anyone can look after them.
They can go anywhere in the house.
They could go anywhere in the house. Low light, highlight. I mean, maybe not highlight, because what if they melt in the like Texan anyway, sorry.
Your bitterness is showing through.
Anyway. Great for every location. You know what? Like I saw Zach's Instagram post, and they had like ivy on like walls, and I actually thought like that looks aesthetic as hell. And I knew it was fake, but you know what? He made it work, and it just like makes you can do things with plastic plants that you just can't do with real plants unless you're like amazing at supplementary lighting, which is something I really want to get into. But anyway, would you like to say how horrible plastic plants are?
Well, I guess it's the only...
I think they're cute.
The only point against plastic plants, I suppose, is they're not very environmentally friendly because they're made from like non-recyclable materials that will eventually go to a landfill somewhere, and they're just waste, really. But actually, I like plastic plants, and I just did that one just to tease you because not everyone can look after real plants, and there's not... And I like those ivy walls from IKEA that you hate, and I really want one, and you won't let me have one.
There's no way we're having one in this house. Real ivy only.
Okay, not happening.
Okay, last point I'd like to make. It's quite interesting one as well. Like, plastic plants have actually come really far in the past, like, 20 years, according to this podcast I listened to. So, like, they started out quite naff and morphologically incorrect.
Yeah.
But now you can buy a plastic plant anything. You have a ZZ plant. There's a Zamioculcas zamifolia plastic plant out there as well. You can't keep ferns alive more than 2 months. Good job, because there's a damn plastic fern there as well. Morphologically correct. It's even got the little sorry on the reverse side of the leaves.
Wow.
Everyone's happy. But yeah.
Except you.
Except me. Plastic plants are just like
You're
a
such
bane
a snob.
to my
You're
existence.
such a snob.
I'll stop myself.
Okay, next one.
You go next one.
Yeah, come on,
We've got time.
next one. Yeah.
So, am I defending this or you?
I'll defend
so
this.
So you've got to say like the benefit of Home Depot stores.
Yeah, so you've written Home Depot stores, but I think that's an American thing. So I think you mean like Homebase and B&Q.
Yeah.
And that these places are good places, and I agree. I think that the places like Homebase and B&Q, which are more accessible to the majority of people who live in urban areas and to a degree suburban areas who aren't as like mobile, don't have a car, maybe not like have the right links to get out to those nurseries or garden centers, which are often quite far out of major cities. Like I can literally walk down the street and half an hour's time I'll be at Homebase, or the other direction I'll be at a B&Q, and they have a really, really robust selection of plants, and they're affordable as well, and that includes like indoor plants, outdoor plants. You can get your fertilizer, you can get your gardening tools, you can get pots and various gardening and planting paraphernalia there. You can also get really popular plants. We got a that big Monstera from Homebase for £6 in the sale, and
but the basic.
But it's basic, but it doesn't matter. Like I don't think a plant needs to be. I don't think there's anything more special about a plant that you buy from a gardening center, and there's nothing more special about going to a gardening center that is a more special experience than going somewhere to buy a plant you like.
I feel like the quest of like searching out a plant that you really desire, going to those like specialist nurseries, communicating with the suppliers, responsibly sourcing your plants, not just like ordering them from Thailand with a really large carbon footprint. I feel like that's like really satisfying. And walking down the road 5 minutes, picking up like XYZ plant, and there's just not as much of sure, you get instant gratification, but I feel like the satisfaction of searching out that like special plant that you've looked for responsibly, I don't just mean like in terms of like the miles that it's traveled, but also like whether or not it's like wild harvested or cultivated for that special purpose. Like knowing what you're looking for and attaining it is so satisfying. And I don't advocate super rare endangered plants. Those plants belong in their environments, and those plants belong in botanical gardens to be conserved for the future. But I feel like specialist nurseries, and they just have such an edge over the Home Depot stores, and like literally every Home Depot store is stuck in the 80s. It's always got those like popular 80s plants, and the people who order these plants are just like, they must be like 50, 60 years old, because they just have no style. Okay. And they're like, and they're never labelled correctly either. Okay, they're like foliage plant.
I've got one more point I would like to say is that I think that the best thing about like Homebase and B&Q and hardware stores having gardening sections and plants is that it makes them available for everyone. It stops that entry barrier. I don't think you need to have to do 10, 20 hours of research into specialist nurseries to get involved in bringing plants into your life, learning to care for them, and learning, I think, often more about the environment and their life cycle through that. I think that many people spend all of their weeks working, and you know, they might want to spend time with their family or have other hobbies, and being able to just go with their family or friends to a store that is accessible to them and to pick up something to kind of bring that greenery into their life is more important than kind of like having to jump through all of these hoops to have something that is like unique. And so what if these plants are from the 70s or 80s? If it brings someone happiness, then that's like that's the full stop.
You've won this one. One point I'd love to add on this though, in defense of these, because I actually think Home Depot stores are like really great. Like the accessibility, it makes gardening and horticulture and plants accessible, like you said. Like I think that accessibility, because like it feels like kind of like a niche, or maybe not so much, a bit mainstream and hipstery at the moment, but it removes that niche from it. It makes it accessible to all, and it's responsibly done. Like each plant in Home Depot store has a plant passport, so you know it comes from like a reputable supplier who's checked that it hasn't got any pests and diseases present before it actually sells it onto you. And the stores themselves actually like vet the plants quite well as well. Obviously they can't predict everything, and they can't guarantee that in a month's time something's not going to pop up out of the blue, but that's why you quarantine plants before they actually go into your home, and sort of like put them in a little area to see what happens on them. But yeah, I feel like the eBay and Etsy, like the rise of online purchasing, it's a dangerous environment because there's no information as to where that plant comes from, what's it got on it, like and is it done correctly. Like the people are buying cuttings and they're not like of two nodes, because like they assume they're getting this really rare and incredible plant, but they're being missold something. And like, you know, people are taking advantage
you often know what you're getting from a place like that, and they're going to have the resources that will help you care for it, because when you buy them from a little house like that, a little shop like that, they often have like the tags in which tells you like what kind of light it likes, what kind of feeding it likes, how often to water it, what the soil should be like. And I think that it's like, it's buying plants like that or being around places like that it's like an entryway into like a kind of further interest. I think that it's such a great stepping stone.
It's a stepping stone, but it does trigger me when like they're all called foliage plants, and I'm like, God damn, yeah, there are foliage plants. Can you just tell me if this is like an Areca palm, or like a Philostachys?
It's like a foliage palm.
It triggers me so hard. Like, why can't you use the proper Latin?
Because that's elitist, and
it's also accessible because like it encourages Latin names into the mainstream.
But they usually do have Latin names like on them somewhere. But like you get triggered when I call like the spider plant, and you keep calling it something else. And every time you talk about it, remember where you were like, oh, you need to go water this, and then you said some Latin name, and I watered the wrong plant because I did not have a clue what he was talking about. And he was like, why did you do that? And I was like, oh, that was right. You were like, oh, you need to trim the blah blah blah. And I was, because it's looking a bit brown. I
said chlorophytum, which is the side plant.
And no, let me finish. And you said trim the chlorophytum, and I'm like, in my head, like, well, you was called this by a Latin name, and I just start chopping the ends off this plant. I just start chopping the ends off it, and then he comes in and he's like, why are you cutting up this plant? And I'm like, you said to chop the ends off it, and he was like, no, that's a cymbidium. I meant the chlorophytum. And then he points to the spider plant. And I was like, well, why didn't you just say the spider plant then?
It's just, okay, counter argument.
Yeah, is this like the Latin names are important, or Latin names suck argument? Because that's what.
Would you like to call the Tradescantia Wandering Dew, which is its most common name?
No,
I think that's a terrible name.
That is terrible, but I would never call it that.
That's its common name.
I would choose a new name for it then.
Tradescantia.
Wandering Friend.
And that's where we end.
Well, on that bombshell, thanks, Joe. If you stayed until the end, I'm sorry. Anyway, thank you for joining us this week. It was really fun to actually kind of go over some more like Storytime style stuff, but also hopefully it's been educational for people who have pests out there as well.
So yeah, integrated pest management. Stay alert.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to turn this off now.